The United States has led the world for almost a century. But in 2025, something's different. From Latin America to Southeast Asia, from Africa to Europe, countries are quietly turning away from the US dollar, American diplomacy, and Western leadership, and looking east. But is China ready to lead? Or is the world simply entering an age without a single global superpower? Let's break down the 10 countries making the pivot toward China, and why this global realignment could shape your future more than any election ever will. For nearly 8 decades, the world ran on a system built by the United States. Military dominance, economic power, cultural influence, and above all, the dollar. After World War II, the US didn't just emerge victorious. It redesigned the global order in its own image. The United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, NATO, free markets backed by American muscle. Washington guaranteed global trade routes, enforced stability, and offered allies something no one else could: protection, money, and global status. From West Germany to South Korea, from Japan to Saudi Arabia, this was the Pax Americana, and it worked. But today, in 2025, that order is unraveling. America is still powerful, but it's distracted, politically gridlocked, trillions in debt, swinging between global leadership and domestic crisis. The world watched the retreat from Afghanistan, the mishandling of the COVID pandemic, the rising use of sanctions like a financial weapon, the war in Ukraine still dragging on. Every moment chipped away at something bigger: trust. More than 30% of the world's economies have now faced US sanctions. And when you can't access dollars or trust the system behind them, you start looking elsewhere. That's where China comes in. Not with ideology, but with infrastructure. Not with alliances, but with access. The Belt and Road Initiative now links over 150 countries. Chinese ports, Chinese credit, Chinese tech, quiet influence, expanding everywhere. But this isn't about China replacing the US, not yet. It's about what happens when the dominant power starts to fade and others start to move. The world isn't choosing sides, it's repositioning. In 2025, Argentina finds itself in survival mode. Inflation's at 140%, the peso is collapsing, and foreign reserves are nearly gone. But this isn't new. Argentina has long been a cautionary tale of debt and instability. So, what is new? Buenos Aires is ditching the dollar in favor of the yuan. Since 2023, Argentina has used the Chinese currency to pay for imports, a lifeline granted by Beijing when Western lenders hesitated. This pivot isn't just about money, it's about who will show up when your economy collapses. China offered fast liquidity, no IMF strings, no Washington lectures. And with Argentina's trade balance already tilted toward Asia, China stepped into a vacuum the US left behind. It now accounts for over 20% of Argentina's imports, and rising. If you're a country in crisis, you don't always choose your allies. Sometimes your allies choose you. Brazil isn't just shifting toward China, it's helping shape a new world order from the global south. In 2023, Brazil and China made headlines by bypassing the US dollar altogether, trading in yuan and reals. That's not just economics, that's a challenge to dollar supremacy. But this partnership goes deeper. China is Brazil's largest trading partner, nearly $152 billion in trade, especially in soy, oil, and iron ore. But there's also growing cooperation in tech, energy, and infrastructure. President Lula has been vocal. Why rely on Western financial systems when China offers faster deals, fewer conditions, and shared interests? Brazil's not abandoning the West. It's positioning itself as a balancing force, a leader in BRICS, and a connector between East and West. In this new world map, Brazil isn't following the shift, it's directing it. The The US-Saudi relationship was once untouchable. Oil for arms, protection for stability. The petrodollar was born from this pact. But today, Riyadh is making bold moves. In 2023, it began accepting yuan for oil in deals with China. By 2025, it's part of BRICS, exploring a new shared currency and building direct trade links to Beijing. Why the pivot? Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is betting on a diversified, post-oil future, and China is helping fund that vision. From smart cities to solar farms, Chinese firms are embedded in Saudi infrastructure. At the same time, the U.S. security umbrella no longer feels ironclad. After the U.S. pullback from the region, the Saudis are hedging, aligning east, without fully abandoning the West. This isn't just about oil payments. It's about redefining global alliances and weakening America's grip on the energy world. Egypt is drowning in debt, over $160 billion, with inflation soaring and food prices spiking. The IMF offers help, but it comes with painful austerity. China offers something else: development, not discipline. Since joining BRICS Plus in 2024, Egypt has leaned harder into Chinese financing. The Belt and Road has brought billions into ports, power plants, and industrial zones along the Suez Canal. This isn't charity. China sees Egypt as a geopolitical linchpin, a bridge between Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. In return, Cairo gets investment without interference. As Washington hesitates and Europe turns inward, China is filling the vacuum with hard cash and hard hats. The trade is simple: infrastructure for influence. For Egypt, whose youth population is desperate for jobs and opportunity, Beijing's model, fast, visible, and pragmatic, looks more appealing than spreadsheets from Washington. Cambodia is China's most reliable partner in Southeast Asia, and it's not even close. Chinese aid built roads, dams, and stadiums across the country, but it's not just economic. In 2022, Cambodia granted China access to Ream Naval Base, a move that sent shockwaves through the Pentagon. Beijing has also invested heavily in Cambodia's digital infrastructure, telecommunications, and surveillance tech. Its influence at every level: political, economic, and military. The U.S. has criticized Cambodia's democratic backsliding, but China doesn't care. That's part of the appeal. For Cambodia, aligning with Beijing means stability and support. For China, it means a strategic outpost near key maritime trade routes. This alliance isn't just about proximity, it's about loyalty and leverage. Pakistan is the epicenter of China's global ambitions. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, is a $62 billion megaproject linking Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea. It includes highways, ports, energy plants, fiber optics, all designed to anchor China's presence in South Asia. Pakistan's economy is fragile. Political instability is constant. The IMF steps in, but China never steps out. Chinese banks extend credit. Chinese engineers build infrastructure, and Chinese diplomacy protects Islamabad at international forums. For China, Pakistan is a gateway, not just for trade, but for projection of power into the Indian Ocean. For Pakistan, China is a partner that never asks about democracy, only deadlines. Together, they represent a new kind of alliance: transactional, durable, and unburdened by Western values. Iran has lived under U.S. sanctions for decades. Cut off from global finance, Tehran has forged a survival strategy rooted in the East, and China is at its center. In 2021, Iran and China signed a 25-year cooperation deal worth $400 billion. It covers everything: energy, infrastructure, tech, and even military training. Chinese companies help Iran sell oil, build roads, and bypass sanctions through complex barter systems and digital currencies. Beijing isn't backing Iran because of ideology. It's backing Iran because it weakens US influence and secures stable energy. For Iran, China is a lifeline. For China, Iran is leverage, a partner that shares a common enemy in Washington. Before 2022, Russia saw itself as an equal power. After the Ukraine invasion and sanctions tsunami, that illusion vanished. Moscow turned east and into Beijing's waiting arms. By 2024, 90% of trade between China and Russia was in yuan or rubles. Energy exports to China surged, and military coordination deepened. But make no mistake, this is no alliance of equals. Russia is becoming dependent, economically, diplomatically, and technologically, on China. Still, the relationship suits both sides. China gets cheap oil, a loyal UN partner, and a Eurasian wedge against NATO. Russia gets survival. This is what the collapse of US dominance looks like. Former rivals uniting, not out of love, but out of shared resistance. Kenya is the economic engine of East Africa, and China is its mechanic. From Nairobi to Mombasa, Chinese-built roads, railways, and energy grids are transforming Kenya's infrastructure. The standard gauge railway alone cost $3.6 billion, funded and built by China. Beijing is now Kenya's largest bilateral lender, investor, and trade partner. Kenyan students study in China. Kenyan officials are trained in Chinese institutions. The West still plays a role, but it's slow, bureaucratic, and conditional. China moves fast. For a young, fast-growing country like Kenya, that speed is the difference between stagnation and progress. Switzerland is known for staying out of conflicts, but it doesn't stay out of business. In 2025, its foreign minister quietly flew to Beijing to discuss upgrades to its 2014 free trade agreement. Swiss exports to China have doubled in a decade, from watches and pharma to machinery and finance. Even while meeting with US officials, Swiss diplomats are deepening ties with Beijing, hedging their bets in an uncertain world. Switzerland isn't abandoning the West. It's preparing for a world where trade flows differently, and neutrality means partnering with both giants. In this global realignment, even the most cautious players are making moves. Quietly, strategically, irreversibly. 10 countries have already started to pivot away from the US, but let's be clear. This isn't China's world yet. It's not even close. Yes, China has built a global footprint, massive trade networks, financial partnerships, even military inroads. But leadership is more than influence. And China, in 2025, still carries heavy baggage. Start with the economy. Youth unemployment is now above 20% in major cities. Entire generations are graduating into job markets with no growth. Property markets are collapsing. Local governments are over-leveraged. Consumer confidence is falling. And fast. The country's one-child legacy has created a demographic time bomb. More elderly, fewer workers, and a shrinking population before it even became fully rich. Then there's the political model. Xi Jinping has centralized power like no Chinese leader since Mao. But in doing so, he's stifled innovation, silenced internal debate, and created an echo chamber at the very top. Abroad, China lacks true allies. It has partners, trade relationships, debtors, but no real coalition like NATO or the EU. No countries that will take political risks to defend China's interests. It also lacks trust. Many nations accept Chinese investment, but they don't trust Beijing's intentions. There's fear of surveillance, data control, dependency, and debt. And most importantly, China doesn't offer a story the world wants to follow. It doesn't have a universal vision. It doesn't lead with values. It leads with contracts. In short, China has stepped into the void, but it's not leading the way forward. At least not yet. The world isn't choosing sides, it's rewriting the rules. And in this new game, There's no guaranteed winner, only those who adapt and those who fall behind. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. The shift has already begun.
All world. Live like a local.